College and Career Ready Classroom, presented by me, Robert Scardina. So to start, we're going to talk about foreseeable obstacles in the CTE classroom. And not only are we going to talk about these obstacles, we're going to talk about how do we overcome them? How do we get past them to move forward with our program? Also in this presentation, we'll be talking about how to keep CTE programs thriving. How do you keep them growing? How do you keep building upon them? And also, how do instructors prepare students for the workforce? This is a key component in any CTE programs because our end goal is to prepare students for the industry. And lastly, we'll be talking about leadership and college and career readiness. How does college and career readiness relate to CTE programs? How do we point students in the right direction with their program of study and how that relates to college and career readiness? So first, let's talk about funding. I think every CTE teacher, this is always in the back of their mind. Do I have enough money for my program? It's no secret that well-established programs need appropriate funding for student success. If you don't have the funds, how are you going to teach the students? Also, money allocated needs to meet instructor and student needs. For example, in my program, there might be pockets of money for larger equipment, over $5,000, like an oven or a grill or a mixer or something like that, when in reality, I need money for food product, smallware such as knives and cutting boards and things like that. So that's always a balancing act there. So that's always been a concern. Also, technology. Do you have enough technology to run your program? In this day and age, every classroom needs access to a computer or an iPad to take certification tests, and some other programs rely entirely on technology. That's what the programs are based on. Next, certification needs. I teach a ServSafe management class and a food handler's safety class. Each one of these certifications costs money. How do we raise the money for that? Is there a pocket of money for certification needs? We're all very aware that a lot of students can't afford $50 to take a certification test. And I feel as an instructor, it is my job to find that money for them. I don't see any reason for them to pay for that. And once again, back to specific items for labs. There's large pockets of money for certain things, and there's not for others. And to end this slide, it is difficult for teachers to provide quality instruction with lack of resources and having to find funding for resources themselves. I think every instructor has had to do this. You've had to do fundraisers. You have to do whatever you can to keep your program running. But it does interfere with actual teaching when you have to focus so much on finding funds for your program. So funding, back to that, how do we overcome the challenges? How do we bring in enough money to run our programs correctly? One of them is do your research. Be aware of where your money's coming from and see what you can do to bring in more. Second, this is more work. Apply for grants. I do this quite a bit. It can be very, very helpful, and it brings money in for the smaller items I need, especially food product. Although, just because you apply for a grant, they just don't give you the money. You have to follow up, and sometimes it can be a tremendous amount of paperwork. So you really got to weigh the pros and cons if it's worth applying for certain grants. Third, speak with your CTE director. They're in charge of that. That is their job. If you have a good director, you're probably already in good hands, but speak to them and tell them your situation so you can move forward. Next, apply a learning model for profit. I'm very fortunate that my program is a business and we make money, and that money goes directly back into the program. So it's kind of an endless cycle. We make money to do more interesting things, and it keeps going. Once again, when you apply this model, it is more work, but I think it's worth it because it is a real world experience for the students and it gets them prepared for industry. So there's a bonus there. Finally, nationalized program assistance. If you have a nationalized program, in my case, such as ProStart, ACF, ServSafe, you can reach out to these programs for funding in some cases. Sometimes it's in form of a grant. Sometimes when you have these nationalized programs, you're allocated more money each year from that specific program. Next, we're going to talk about enrollment. This is a very important factor in a successful CTE program. Some of the barriers: low class enrollment. You don't have enough students or none at all. Also, large class enrollment. You don't want too large of a class or you're not going to have good instruction. There's not going to be enough for every student to do. And finally, scheduling conflicts. This is a very big one. In a lot of cases, it is not the instructor's fault that no one is in their program. It has to do with scheduling. Common Core classes will come first, and then the CTE students are placed into those later. So the students have to take certain classes, Common Core English, math, science, those things. And then the problem is how do you get students in those Common Core classes and still be able to take your program in its entirety? So what are some solutions? The first, program promotion. You have to promote your program. If you do not promote it, no one is going to take it, okay? And also, you have to run a good program. Word gets out if you're a good instructor or not, and students are getting access to the knowledge they need for industry. In our case, we have an 8th grade tour. Students come in before they're in high school. They look at all the CTE programs, and then they get to choose which one they would like to be in. Once again, they might want to be in your program, but if it doesn't meet up with the schedule, you have problems. So that leads to the next thing, involvement with the master schedule. If you can have any input on the master schedule with your administrator, it is very helpful. I've gone to my administrator and gone, what can I do to get more kids into my program? There seems to be a lot of conflict with their classes, and it's hard to get in there. So get in there, talk to your administrators, talk to people at the board, and let your voice be heard. Let your voice be heard. Let people know. Certain students want to be in your program, and they can't get in there. What's helped me is have the parents call the school and say, I want my child in this program. It's a great solution. Parents' voices are heard a lot more than teachers sometimes, and that's just the reality of it. Next, sustainability. How do we achieve sustainability in CTE in all programs? How do we do this? How do we keep them going? I think the best thing to say is for all programs, let's use mine as an example, nationalized program. We have the ACF, we have ProStart, we have ServSafe. These are all nationalized programs with certification. Do I agree with all these programs? Yes and no. Some components are great, other parts I think are pointless, but that's just the reality of it. I think at the end of the day, the intentions are good, and that's what we need to keep programs going. These nationalized certifications are what people are looking at. It's like, what did the student learn? Did they achieve these objectives? And it's on a national level, so everybody in the whole nation is learning the same thing, so everybody gets a fair shake. Next, developing a college and career-ready culture. How do college and career-ready standards relate to CTE programs? Look, there's 12.3 million students that are enrolled in CTE programs in the United States. That's a lot of students. And integrating these standards into CTE has a direct relation to student success. Math, English, science, and history are all components of a successful CTE program. Obviously, math comes into play with building construction, auto mechanics, machine tool, from the nursing standpoint, and biotech, science plays a major part, and obviously English and communication skills are important for any program. And lastly, CTE programs keep kids in school. A lot of kids who really don't like being in these core classes, they will show up for a CTE program. It's hands-on, they like it, and I feel that it really keeps them going, and it develops a culture for the whole school system as a whole. And lastly, to end this presentation, I would like to say that CTE programs are the backbone of America. Not to sound overly patriotic and you can't do anything besides career and technical education, but it has come a long way. There are so many jobs created by it, and I think honestly it gets kids into the workforce, almost ready for the workforce, before they even graduate from high school. There's so many great programs out there, not just the culinary programs, but really advanced technical things that where students can be very, very successful in life. And I just think they're great. And trade schools are coming along a long way. And I think one advantage to these programs, instead of a kid going to college and accumulating a lot of debt, a lot of times industry will pay for student certifications and things like this. So they're paying for your education and you're getting paid at the same time. So it really is a great thing. But there are a lot of hoops to jump through and things like that. But I just think that these programs are beneficial. Thank you.